Okay, just say a few words for people who are watching for the first time here. You're welcome to pose whatever questions you may have. You can pose the questions just by writing your question in the chat box or by speaking your question. I will be muting you throughout the meeting because there is an echo that sometimes interferes with the meeting. So just a couple of words about satsang, about this meeting. So satsang is basically an inquiry and a resting. It's a looking into the question of what is the reality? What am I? What am I truly? What is peace? What is causeless happiness? What is happening? So it's an inquiry into what we refer to as existence or life. And it is also resting as being, resting as the self, resting, just resting in restfulness itself. It's best in your meeting, in this meeting, to listen from your openness, meaning to listen from a quiet place, from an open place that is available, that is hearing, contemplating what is being shared, as if it's heard for the first time. There is a tendency to be thinking about what's happening. In satsang, the invitation is to just not know, to stay as this not knowing, to invite not knowing, and to remain in this fresh presence, not to be so concerned about what you're getting out of it or not, simply to rest as presence. The core inquiry in satsang, in Advaita, is the inquiry into the belief and the feeling of being a separate self. We feel as if we are the body-mind. We think that we are born, that we exist in time and space. And this belief and this feeling of being a person, of being a man or a woman, is the core of the sense of separation. It is the heart of our unhappiness, the core of our unhappiness, is this sense of limitation and this feeling that there is something that can affect me, that I'm vulnerable. And this identification with the body, of course, the body is vulnerable. The body is an object in time and space. And this association with the body is a result of not contemplating it. It's a belief structure that is based on an inheritance. We basically inherited this ignorance. We were sort of taught that we are this person, that we are a body-mind, that we are this boy or this girl. And from then on, we have been living our life, and most of us still continue to live our life from that perspective, from that position. So in these meetings, we are interested in turning our attention to this belief, in noticing that it is as if we are putting on purple glasses. When you put on purple glasses, everything you perceive is purple. And you're unaware that you're wearing purple glasses, and you believe that the world is purple. So the invitation in satsang is to notice these lenses, these purple glasses, and remove them so we can perceive without the bias of belief. Now, most of you, if not all of you, have heard that I am the self, that the reality of our experience is universal consciousness. And of course, hearing that, there is a certain resonance. But we still remain identified as a person, although we've heard that and we sort of maybe understand it to a certain degree. We still experience the sense of limitation to various degrees. And as we contemplate this belief structure and live according to what is revealed to us, that what I truly am is this presence, this causeless, effortless presence, the impressions of limitations fade, and at some point in time we start to experience more and more the causeless peace of the self. So these are just some introductory words. The rest of the meeting is addressing whatever questions you may have. I have a couple of questions that were sent to me. I will address them later on at some point in this meeting. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to pose them.
Hi, Magdi. It's Zoe.
Zoe, hello, Zoe.
Okay, so I was re-listening to one of your satsangs, and you said consciousness is not in the need business. And when you don't need, everything comes to you. And so I was just thinking about, and I'm seeing this more and more, but so all desires must be let go, even the desire for liberation, right? That's needing or wanting liberation.
Well, there are, say, two kinds of desires. There is the worldly desire, the desire for experiences, the desire for objects, the desire for some image or some personal aggrandizement. So there are desires that are personal, meaning they arise from the person, and meaning from the belief that I'm a person, and they aim to better the person, to make the person healthier, wealthier, more lovable, etc. According to what we believe is a good person, is a better person. You see, some people believe to be very powerful, to be domineering. Others they believe to be accepted is better. So there are the personal desire, and then there are desires that are impersonal, meaning desires that do not relate to the person, to becoming a better person, but they're come through us, like the desire to celebrate, the desire to realize God, the realize truth, the desire to live as truth. That there isn't like a personal gain as in there. It's more a desire that has the qualities that are universal and not the personal qualities. You see?
Okay.
Yeah, the desire to enjoy beauty, to celebrate beauty, to have beauty around you, to uh, so it's quite different from desires for objects or for form. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Because, yeah, it just, I had put it all in one category, thinking that all desires are the personal me wanting something it doesn't, or it perceives it doesn't have.
You see,
Ah,
when we have a desire for love. It's very different from desire to be loved as a person. We
okay.
desire love, meaning we love love. It's not really a desire. We use this word desire because it was introduced in your question. It's more like a sort of it's a it's a calling. It's an inner calling within us to for harmony, for beauty, for peace, for freedom. It's not like I'm desiring to be a free person. Freedom doesn't apply to a person because a person uh, already by definition is not free. It's already uh, under the spell of the uh, the physical realm, the body mind realm, which obviously is not free because the body is completely dependent and mortal. So the desire for freedom transcends the personal freedom. And you know, personal freedom is, I would say, like a uh, a mind reflection of the absolute desire. So there is an absolute desire, which is a desire for love, for beauty, for wisdom, for harmony, which is different from desiring to be wise as a person, you know, that I am
Ah,
wise
okay.
or
Yeah.
I am beautiful or I am loved. It's
Yeah.
more of a certain harmonious order in the realm. We we have a we are this harmony at the core. In other words, our essential nature is this harmony, is this freedom, is this peace, is this beauty. That's our essential nature. So what comes above that is a layer, the layer of the person. Oh, I am Magdi, I am Zoe, and I have these personal problems, and I have to sort of uh, aggrandize myself, get happy as a person. So these are the veils that get in the way of of the celebration of freedom and joy. So you have to understand that when the mind appropriates, for example, the desire for freedom and says, "Oh, I want to be free as a person," it is basically taking the freedom of consciousness and reducing it to some object that it can get to for itself, itself being also an object.
Ah. Hmm. You know, Magdi, I was also thinking about, I was talking with Esther last night and mentioned this to her, but you know, the importance of a living teacher. Um, and I've told Esther, you know, she said some things to me that cut straight through. And then meeting you, the same thing. It's like hearing your words versus just reading words. It cuts through something. It's like a knot is released, some belief or something is just gone. And I guess that's the why most of us need a living teacher. There's very few that can do it without a living teacher.
Well, you know, the teacher arises when you are ready, when you have that openness, and then when you meet the teacher is like the living proof of the self, and you're experiencing that directly. But when you are still say deeply in the mind, you may meet a teacher and hear some things, and there may be some resonance. But when you experience that the resonance with a teacher, you're experiencing the resonance with the self, with the teachings through the teacher, and it frees you. There is a dissolution that all your questions start to get answered. So it's good to bring up whatever questions you have when you feel that you're hearing some answer to your question. Then of course this would be your path at that point in time, at that point in time in your journey. And at some point you will transcend the teacher, meaning you and the teacher are one. And so it's not really transcending, it's merging in the self, being the self. And so it's a process of the questions getting answered, and at the same time the sense of effortless beingness, borderless beingness, growing in and being more and more your experience.
Yeah. Okay. And then Esther and I both had a question. Can you make your Saturday, April 14th into like a Zoom meeting as well? Have do you know the Zoom platform? I know you're doing an
Yeah.
all-day retreat at your place, but
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw that out there and let you think about it.
Right. I would do that. I just haven't done it before, so I don't know. I mean, I would look into that. Hopefully, maybe somebody here could help me with that. But yes, I'm not sure how it works, but yes, I could do that.
Okay.
We'll look in that direction. But offhand, I am not very familiar with how to do it yet.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll look up some information and see if I can send you something. It's really, from my experience, it's pretty easy. And there's like a free thing that supports, I don't know, maybe 10 participants, and then you have to pay beyond that. But I'll send you something.
Right. Okay. So every person has to have the Zoom app downloaded on their computer, right?
Right. And then there's just a link that's
Right.
sent out
Okay.
to join.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sure. We could do that. Sure. And so, okay. Well, let's look in that direction. We can talk some more about this.
Okay. Thank you, Magdi.
Okay.
This is Ananda. I'm incognito.
Hello, Nanda. Yes, I see Ma Wolf and AWI. Okay.
That's my friend Marjorie.
Okay, hello, Marjorie.
I was just thinking the Google Hangout would work pretty well. It would just be, if we just set up the Google Hangout like this, and it was running all day, wouldn't that be basically the same thing as the Zoom?
Yes, sir.
I don't see why it would be any different. If somebody was compassionate to us at a distance, that they could occasionally aim the camera so that we see what's going on.
Right.
I don't know if Zoom, like Zoe could maybe say if Zoom is different, but also I just want to say I'm excited about the possible retreat in Northern California. And I was just curious, one thing is, how many people do you think you would want or need?
I'm not familiar with that facility. I just visited it online. It looks really beautiful, very lovely setting.
Yes.
I don't know how many people they can accommodate, but and I don't know how many people would be interested in traveling to Mount Shasta. But so it depends. You know, as soon as we announce it, then we will know how many people will attend, and then we just play by ear. So
it'll have to do with the availability, because it's going to be the best part of the time, best time of their year, because that's when it's nice to be there, you know, and it's
right,
the spring is over.
Late July or August, is that
late July, early August, perfect.
Yeah. So as soon as we have this lined up, I will announce it.
Yeah,
that will take it from there.
We'll get more information about what they have available, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me answer a question, or two questions that were sent to me. So the first question is, can you clarify the terms enlightenment, self-realization, and total self-realization? I often see people using these terms and arguing about their meaning. What is your experience with enlightenment and self-realization? How are they different? And how do I reach this? Is it a sort of epiphany and transformation? Okay, I am very specific about how I use these terms. There are, in a way, they're generic terms, and they've been used in so many different ways by various people. I specify the term enlightenment to refer to an initial awakening, like an initial glimpse into your true nature. In other words, before enlightenment, we're living in the bubble, the me bubble, in the fog, in the identification of, I am this man, this woman, and I'm my family, my friends, my teachers, etc. That's basically what is the bulk of your experience. That is the pre-enlightenment. And enlightenment refers to a glimpse. And this glimpse in that timeless moment, because it's not in time, it's not an experience. It is a non-experience that we refer to afterwards as an experience. But it's a non-experience, it's a revelation, and it varies. There are various degrees of opening in the enlightenment. Enlightenment refers to seeing the illusory nature of the me. In that moment, I'm going to use the word moment, you realize with complete clarity that you're not a person. All of that is a mental structure. And simultaneously, you perceive in that moment the realm of consciousness. You perceive yourself as that, as the formless self. But soon after, various people have written about their enlightenment. Some say after a few hours, some after a few days, some after a few weeks. In some cases, it doesn't close, it just remains open. But in most cases, it reverts back to an experience. The mind comes back on board, and we're back into the me, into the sense of me. But there has been the egg, the shell is cracked. You can no longer fully return to the me, not completely. There is now an unease with being the person, and also there is a knowingness that that there is a reality that is other than the me. So it's the beginning of your journey. It's your initiation into the contemplation of the self. So that is how I use the term enlightenment. And there can be many enlightenment experiences, many enlightenments throughout your life. And every enlightenment cracks the eggs, the shell a little more, and widen, the light, more lights is able to shine through. So it's not always the case that enlightenment is a very major, event. It could be less noticeable. There are various degrees of glory to your enlightenment, and in following, there are many insights that in many cases are not even noticed until after the fact. So that is how I refer to the term enlightenment. Now, self-realization. Now, the term self-realization, I refer to it as the Sahaja Samadhi, knowing yourself without any return, without any back and forth, as the self. Also referred to as being stabilized as the self, as this transparency of being. You can no longer return to being a person. It's just, it's like the ice is melted, and now that's it. It's water. You cannot return to ice. It's just temperature has reached the complete melting of the ice, and the little ice that remains is now melted. It cannot return. So that is the self-realization. Now the initial enlightenment, where you know you're not a person, but you are consciousness, but there's still, you're not fully established, is referred to as the nirvikalpa samadhi, and the being established as the self is referred to as the sahaja samadhi. The contemplation of the self has a sort of ending, which is the final melting of the ice into water, meaning the Sahaja Samadhi. But it's not a complete ending, in that there is an ever deepening celebration and rejoicing as the self. So there is a perfume of the emanation of the perfume of the self. It doesn't end. It just keeps on blooming and emanating. But there is no longer a sense of lack. In self-realization, there is no longer the sense of lack. While in the Sahaja Samadhi, there is still the sense of lack that comes. Now, total self-realization, I don't know what that is. Is self-realization of itself is total. Yes, there is a lot of argument, you know, in around these terms. Maybe there is some confusion because some people go to various teachers, and some teacher uses the term enlightenment in a certain way, another uses the term enlightenment in a different way, so it creates some confusion. And what is your experience with enlightenment and self-realization? As I said, enlightenment is not an experience, it's a non-experience. There is a moment of ending, of dying. The mind dies. The entire me structure dies. And in that moment, you know yourself as God, as the light of being, as infinite self. And in that moment also, the entire structure, the entire me structure is not there. It's just and there is a knowingness. Now, my experience, well, I will keep that. I will keep that question unanswered for now. I will answer it maybe in a retreat at some point in time if it's raised again. But and is it a sort of epiphany? I don't know exactly, you know, what you would mean by epiphany. Definitely, it's a momentous experience to know oneself and to have this clarity about what I am truly. And yes, it is quite transformative. It is the beginning of the end of the personal self. Okay, I think there is some glare here on the screen, right? I'm going to see if I can move.
Yeah, I was thinking it looks like the sun is hitting the screen. And
yeah, the sun is hitting the screen. Let me see, maybe I can turn this way.
It makes a beautiful patina.
Let me see, see if this is better. Oh yeah, right? Is it better?
Beautiful.
Okay, that's better. Okay. Okay, yeah, the sun is setting there. You know, another just for a second. These questions, it's a good question, but just wanted to say that the entire spiritual inquiry is about happiness. It's not so much about understanding the differences between enlightenment and self-realization, although you know, this understanding also has its place, but not get distracted that it's the path of love and beauty. It's the path of happiness. So just want to share that.
So you mentioned non-experience, and non-experience is one of the most subtle things I can imagine. Can you say a little more what can be said about a non-experience?
You know, from the perspective of the mind, meaning from the perspective of thinking that I am a person, everything is an experience because it relates whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're perceiving, every perception, every thought relates to a subject. So the reason is subject and object relationship. And so there is an experience that relates to an experiencer. And then there is the experiencer, in fact, is not there, but it's a thought. There is a thought that there is an experiencer, and that this experiencer, which is consciousness, is actually a person. It's a physical, let's say, experiencing, and experiencing in external forms. Experiencing the mind, but I am not the mind. Experiencing perceptions, and so there is a subject-object relationship in the experience. Now, that's what we refer to as thought and mind in Advaita, because there is thought that is functional, that is not an issue, but in Advaita, in the teaching, we refer to the particular thought that has a pre-thought in it, that has a belief in it, of that I am a person. That is like the unnoticed thought, the unnoticed belief I'm the person, and then all the thinking that relates to has a subject, has a personal subject. So your question was about no mind, yes? Was that your experience?
It was about a non-experience.
Right, non-experience. So just talk about enlightenment. You know, enlightenment is all these structure, the subject-object structure, which is like the lenses through which we're perceiving, are magically, via grace, they're lifted. And they're lifted, they're not just thinned out, they're completely lifted. And there is just the sunshine. It's just the light of being. And this light of being is not something that you're experiencing, it is what I am. So you're experiencing your true self. The experience of the true self is not an experience, it's a beingness. It's a momentary death of the me, a momentary death of the subject and object, and in that that's referred to as being.
Presence.
Being is somehow veiled to us, veiled to the subject. The subject, in the dualistic sense, the subject perceives an object, cannot experience being because he or she is experiencing their limitation. They're experiencing their borders, they're experiencing their personhood.
Right.
And so they can experience thought, external perceptions as happy or unhappy, depending on the nature of their self-definition. You see, their culture, their conditioning, etc. The human experience cannot go beyond how far it defines itself, but it's still defining itself, even if it's like a grandiose definition of myself.
Right.
It's still limited, and so it is not whole, not complete, and it is an experience because there is a subject and object. But in the absence of any self-definition, there isn't an experiencer of an experience, because there isn't an inside and outside. There isn't an over here or over there. There is no point at which you end and something else starts. So how could you experience? So you cannot experience the self, you can only realize the self, awaken to the self, or be the self. Be the self is meaning a recognition of the I am. It's not a personal being or trying to be, or there is a person in being the self. It is just a recognition that the reality that perceives in this very moment is a formless, is borderless and formless, ageless and nameless and genderless, and that is the reality of being, the I am. In that revelation, in that realization, there is no experience.
Mm-hmm. You know, in the way that Francis talks about, Francis and Rupert also talk about, lead meditations about knowing and awareness and maybe even experience being. Could you say that maybe it's experience itself, but it's not experience of something or experiencing something like that?
If you want,
because there's something that feels like experience. It's like, well, it's the experience of presence, you might say, but there's no one holding that conceptual self.
You could say it's an experience of presence, but without an experiencer.
So it's,
if you are okay with that way of speaking, if you're okay with that formulation, then it's an experience. It's an experiencer-less experience.
I think so, but it's what's striking me right now is that, and it's been gradually becoming more for me, is that the mechanics of illusion or delusion is so simple. It seems like such a big deal, and it gets talked about and all the practices and everything to get over it. But from what you were saying, it was just so simple. It's like there's an idea of me, and then there's everything is seen through that, right? So that it's in a limited mode, it's in a limited realm, and then all you're doing, it's like, satsang is a beautiful, amazing thing, but really all you're doing is saying you're believing the wrong thing, or you're looking in the wrong place, or something like that.
Yes, it is simple once you start to understand it, and then of course you have to live your understanding for that impression of unhappiness and separation to dissolve out of your space, and for you to be established as your true self. It is, we're always looking in the wrong direction when we start when we are overlooking the contemplation of when we are overlooking the contemplation of our belief, our initial belief. So at some point, you may find yourself able to rest as being, as presence. But when the me belief is still on board, it has a certain tenacity, you're unable to rest as being, because you're constantly perceiving from the me perspective, and you're worried, and you're concerned, and you have this sense of lack and seeking. And
lack and what? What's the word?
Seeking.
Anxiety?
Seeking.
Oh, seeking, sorry.
Seeking. Lack and seeking.
Yes.
And at some point in your life as a person, this sense of lack and seeking will lead you to the contemplation. It will hopefully lead you gently, or it will maybe rub your nose, really hard, lead you to start to relax this tendency, this contracted me. You sort of, in a way, you're starting to surrender your me to God, or you're surrendering you're surrendering, and the more surrendered you become, whether it's by exhaustion or disappointment or whatever, the more it's possible for you to start to hear the teaching. Not necessarily, though, because you could just stay in your exhaustion and sort of in a way sort of resign and surrendered without contemplating. This is why the teaching has a two-pronged approach. One is the letting go, the surrendering, and the other is the inquiry. They're like two pillars to the inquiry. What is my reality? What am I truly? And at the same time releasing. You will find people like sometimes that have in their old age, their life, where they're like in their 80s or whatever, they're very relaxed and very released, but they're very far from happiness, because they're only doing the releasing now out of exhaustion, and they don't have they haven't been graced with the contemplation. And there are others who do contemplation, they become like a sadhana addicts, or they become like a practice, heroes or fanatics of practice. But they haven't surrendered, so they still have to surrender, and they have to surrender the me. They have to surrender the practitioner. I mean,
yes,
not just that, but also that.
Right.
But what was your question? There was a different question. Okay.
That was the whole thing. Is everything you're saying is great. It's just clarifying. I followed up the thing about non-experience with.
That was it. Non-experience, right?
Yeah. That was it.
You see, if you can go to your direct experience, you'll find no experience. You will only find consciousness. If you go directly to the reality, to the what am I, to the I am, you will not find an experience. You just find a suspension. Everything is suspended into your inner silence, and everything is shining from your inner silence as your inner silence, and it's You're enveloped in the sense of awe, not knowingness and beingness, in the peace of being. But you won't find an experience. Afterwards, the thought may arise. I had an experience, it was a nice experience, but as soon as that arises, it's bringing with it that fictitious subject, the fictitious experience. But that's just the old thinking arising from that, the virus of personhood.
I think I'm in a process of a shift where it feels like when I have the usual sense of an experiencer and a person and a life, whatever, I notice it's like a daydream. It's like, oh, a little daydream, but I'm here. I'm more fundamentally here.
Yeah.
And
and that here is nowhere and everywhere. Is not a here in space. It's not a here in time and space. It's a here that has no words to it. And the impression of space, the impression of this room, or of this field, arises in this. To this.
In this, what was that word? It arises in what?
In this.
Oh, okay.
And to this.
Yes. Yes.
And as this. Because this perception of this room is a complete intimate with the I, the knowingness. The known is completely intimate with the knowingness, with the I. I am this knowingness, and all what is known is intimate, meaning at zero distance.
Right.
Of the knowingness of the I.
So, like I said, like a daydream, because a daydream is totally intimate. You're just dreaming it,
Yes, yes.
And if it goes away, it's no problem. It's
yes.
not even.
It's a waking. You are in deep sleep awake. If you could say that.
I see that. I love that. I always pondered that from Ramana says that. Well, thank you. This is a wonderful talk.
Okay.
Magdi, it's Esther.
Hello, Esther.
As we sit in satsang in this not knowing and non-experiencing, and as we, in a way, you already answered my question, but would you just speak to the very last thing you said, kind of related to what I want you to talk about. It's being in the world, but not of it, as Jesus said. Being in the marketplace, being engaged day in and day out, and having the non-experience in that engagement. It just seems like whenever my mind is engaged in any way, there's usually trouble, or there's some, distraction. And I just would like to hear you talk about the experience of not experiencing in the marketplace, in the world, and not being of that, and not falling for it.
Yes, Esther. Just a note, Holly, I saw your comment and I will come to it in just a minute, okay? Before I talk about the question directly, Esther, I would like to say that when anything arises, when the world arises, when the mind arises, that arising is subject to you. You are not its subject. There may be the impression that you are its subject, that it is ruling you. But if you take a closer look, you will find that it is really not your subject. You are not its subject. You're not its subject. It responds to you. You have available to you the freedom to look at it and decide not to be its victim. It doesn't matter how you are feeling. It doesn't matter what is happening. You have the option of looking at what is happening and deciding that, okay, it's not going to be my boss. It will go where it will go. Things will unfold the way things will unfold. What do I care? What do I care? I am in God's hands, in God's arms. God wants me to go on some ride. Not a problem. I remain in God's hands. That inner contemplation grows you and becomes more and more the place where everything comes and dissolves and rests and finds that there is a larger peace here. That is not living in the old patterns of fear, that is willing to die, that is dying in a moment, that recognizes birth and death as one, moment by moment. As of your question about living in the world but not being of it, in a way, I already answered it.
Yeah.
What I just shared with you right now.
Yeah.
But I would say a little bit more. That the world appeared to me. Where is it? I only find myself. So I stay with the question, where is the world? And I find myself with my experience. What is it in my experience that I call the world? When I look really closely, I don't find anything outside. I don't find it outside. I don't find it inside. I just find this wordless, this silent presence. And so you could say that the world appears to me. I am in the world, I'm moving in the world, but what is it that's moving? If you just look at the hands moving, and you say, what is it that's moving? And you ask yourself, am I moving? Am I moving? You will come to the non-movement. At the heart of all movement is the non-movement. The stillness. And movement before the thought, there is no thought. And then the thought arises, the hand movement. It arises as this is arising, and it's not separate. There isn't anything separate. So there is the creative capacity to name and to label and to call and to structure. But it does not pertain to that is nameless, wordless, and structureless. It's just like a blank page, and you have crayon and you can draw things on the blank page. You draw a lot of things on the blank page with all colors, yellow, blue, green. But that page is still blank. It remains blank. So I would like to say that it's best not to strive for anything, because whatever you're striving for is a state. But resting as your true self is just a contemplation of what am I. It's not an activity of resting. It is within the what am I, there is the stillness of being. Because the I that is in that question, what am I, is the formless self. The stillness of being is contained within your contemplation. And that's what resting refers to. It's not an activity. It is a non-activity, a relaxing of the hold, a falling into the wider vastness of being that keeps widening. It's an invitation that is endless. And it's not any particular experience. It's not something that somebody can experience. It's more the expression of truth, the expression of the self, the expression of being. Because being is not just a dead being, it's a being that has the qualities of the self, the quality of love, peace, beauty, transparency, effortlessness. And as events arise in your life, you have the option of taking them to the me that is gonna start to shake and worry, and or you have the option to take them to the self. Say, okay, well, gee, that's something really stupid is happening now. Okay, all right, let's see what goes. Let's see, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. Okay, try this. It doesn't work. Let's try that. Okay, but you're not that turmoil, because the worldly goods are not the real good. Okay, Esther? Yes.
That touched home. Thanks, Magdi.
Okay. Okay, Barbara writes Esther's question and your answer are very helpful to me. Thank you, Barbara. You're welcome, Barbara. You're welcome. You see, I think there was a yes, Holly. One moment, let me just see about copying your question. See, so. Okay, so Holly, you're right. Okay, so hi Magdi, I'm watching on YouTube. Technical difficulties, okay. There's a bit of lag. Yes, there is a lag. If you're watching on YouTube, you will find there is a lag, right? Tara had mentioned that to me. I would love for you to speak more about surrender and what we're surrendering to. As you know, I've had lots of challenges over the last few weeks and I wasn't sure how to dive to it or surrender to what was going on. Yes. So, you know, within surrender, Holly, there is an intuition that we have. That intuition can have various degrees of stability in it. But in surrender, there is an intuition that that God is there, that there is a greater order where nothing is held onto, and that holding on is not the path. So we're surrendering, we're always surrendering to God, meaning to the self. We're surrendering to that deep knowingness within us that is the path. The deep knowingness within us that struggling and fighting and just maintains the contraction, maintains the separation, maintains the division, maintains the angst, and does not take us any step closer to truth, to universal peace, universal wisdom, universal happiness. So we're always surrendering to our true self, because this self is complete freedom. In surrendering, there is some recognition, an intuition of our freedom, of the freedom of the self. The more you surrender, the more it's easier for you to surrender. And the more you contract, the harder it is for you to surrender. The more you argue, the more you are in your emotions and your feelings, and it's harder for you to. But in surrender, there is a reward. The reward comes to you. But the surrender has to be a genuine one, meaning it's not a negotiation. Negotiation is okay, but that's something else than the surrender. In surrendering, you're not negotiating. So the surrender has two dimensions to it. You surrender your mind, your beliefs, your thoughts, your opinions, your ideas about yourself, about others. Meaning you don't buy into your thoughts. You don't stand behind them like they are the truth. You surrender them. And you are open. When you're surrendering your thoughts, you're open. You're clearing the space, and you can listen better. You can hear better. You can converse better, because you're not holding on to your ideas. You're not holding on to your opinions. You're not holding on to your images of yourself, to your ideas about the world, about life, about how things should be for you, how your parents need to be with you, how your friends need to be with you. You're clearing that. You're clearing that space. And so you're able to listen better. You're more present. And also when you surrender your mind, your thoughts and your beliefs, it's harder for the other to argue with you. They don't find an opposition. And when they don't find an opposition, their weapon falls out of their hands. They themselves, it takes two to tango. They cannot tango alone. Some are stubborn, but the general direction is that it's good across the board. So that's one aspect of surrender, is surrendering your mind. But more important aspect is to surrender your feelings. And you surrender your feelings by completely embracing them, by not arguing with them, not fighting with them, not trying to avoid them. Often we get wrapped up in our feelings, in thinking. We start to think because we don't want to feel. And so we think about, how right we are, how wrong the other is. But all of that is because we don't want to feel what's happening. We don't want to feel, meaning we don't want to be silent and quiet. You cannot feel via thinking. You only feel via your silence. You can only experience this energetic manifestation from your silence, not from your noisy mind. The noisy mind is always labeling and naming and comparing and judging, etc. But your inner silence is a listening space. It's there. It is the self is this silence, this inner silence. And so when you're experiencing the sensation, the feeling, you're actually in the silence. And the feeling comes to the silence and rests in the silence. It recognizes the silence. It cannot fight or argue with the silence. It can only die in it. The mind may say, well, what am I going to get out of that? Because the mind is always reverting to problem. It comes back to, well, what am I going to get out of it? Am I going to get the real goodies or not the real goodies? Am I going to get enough or not enough? But you have to be watchful of these thoughts that arise. It has nothing to do with these thoughts. These thoughts are just trash. They're always trying to revert you back to the me. But the inner silence of the self is not a me. It has no borders. It has no agenda. It's just, it is love. And it's expressed itself as love. It loves itself. It loves the self. There is only love. There's only that. So you also trust your teacher, your friend, who has traveled this path and speaking to you from that freedom, as that freedom, and inviting you to rise beyond the veils of personhood, the illusion of vulnerability, the impression of urgency. That's what the personal self is. It's just these contractions. And when we decontract and relax, where is the personal self? Where are the worries and troubles? It's always these thoughts about me, meaning me as a man or a woman, me as a person in time and space. What's going to happen to me? Well, we all know what's going to happen to the body, but you're not the body. Nothing happens to you. All sorts of things happen to the body-mind. As the manager of the body-mind, you do your best, but you're not going to worry and have sleepless nights over the body that you know is only heading into one direction. You remain as the peace and the happiness. You don't compromise that on behalf of the body. And surrender is also moment by moment. And it has no judgment. It's not like, oh, I did good, now I'm doing bad. No, drop all that. It's not in time, it's in the eternity of now, the eternal beingness. So surrender moment by moment. And surrender your agenda. Now, love and happiness are not an agenda. I am completely open to love and happiness and joy and freedom and beauty and friendship. That's not an agenda. That's just what the self is. I recognize that. But I'm not negotiating in the world for a personal agenda. You have to be careful when you have a personal agenda, you are feeding the person. But when you're celebrating the self, yes, you're open to all sorts of beautiful experiences, beautiful, reunions and all sorts of wealth coming to you from the universe. But not at the cost of your freedom, not at the cost of your happiness. Okay, Holly. Thank you for your question. Any question, anybody? Okay, there is another question that was sent to me. How can I directly experience and know the I am, which is not born nor does not die? In a way, we speak about that throughout the entire satsang. You cannot experience or know the I am as you experience a play at the theater or as you experience a sunset or a sunrise. You experience and you know the I am, the unborn, as your very being, as this transparency of being, as this beingness that is formless, that has no compartments in it, that has no phenomenal qualities to it. You turn your attention not to what is perceived, but to the formless self, to the reality that perceives what is absolute. And in your experience, what is absolute is not what appears. It is that you know as your very being, the radiance of being. It's wordless and formless and inner silence of being that shines as all perceptions, as all sensations. That's the blessing. This is what is the heart, the universal heart, the cosmic heart. Without it, it's inconceivable. Nothing is without it. All is that. The true peace, the true, genuine, causeless, nameless, yes, it is beyond birth and death. Birth and death require mind. But the self, the I am, is not of mind. In Buddhism, they use the term mind. They have the capital M, mind, and the minuscule, I don't know how you say in English, the regular M, mind, lowercase mind. They use the same term. It's confusing for people who are not familiar with Buddhism. They refer to the capital M, mind, as the self, as the absolute. And the lowercase mind to refer to the phenomenal realm. And they don't talk too much about ignorance. I'm sure teachers know about that, which is identification. It's not just thought, it's a belief. Why am I bringing this up? Let me see. Mind. Forgot it. Yes, they're talking about birth and death. That birth and death are in the realm of mind, but not the capital M, the lowercase m. While the self is the unborn, it's a capital M, mind. Any questions, anybody?
So now I drive back to Santa Cruz right after the satsang.
Okay.
last satsang I drove down here to Santa Cruz. I mean, now I drive back to Sebastopol.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And
I remember.
so, so how do I enjoy the self to the maximum on on my drive and always? That ocean is such a nice a beautiful reminder. So take the ocean way.
Oh yes, that's a beautiful. Yeah, Route 1, right? Is it?
Oh.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah. Get real. Okay. Very lovely to be with you all.
Namaste.
Thank you very much, and have a safe drive.
Thank you. And everybody think about coming to Northern California in the summer, late July.
We'll announce it. It'll be wonderful. Very wonderful. Okay. Namaste, everybody.